This is a WKYT podcast.
Check. It looks like we're recording, Andrea.
Are you going to leave that in?
Sure. All right, here we go.
Sure am.
We are recording on new equipment, the official WKYT podcast studio. We got microphones hanging up in front of us, no longer carrying around my camera. I mean, I still use it every day for shooting my stories, but...
This is just one less thing to worry about.
One less step. Now I don't have to put it on my laptop now. Just go edit in the edit bay. And
there you go.
So far, things seem to be going pretty quick. And, they've been pretty accommodating when we say, hey, we need to schedule this for the podcast. So, things are going well. And
I know.
And here's the thing. That kind of accommodation motivates you to do more.
You're exactly right. And I already have an idea for our next guest, but this is going to be a tough one. Bill just had his 35th anniversary.
Oh. So you want a solo Bill show?
I think we should.
I'm all for it. I would love it.
I know. I really think we should, and we're going to have to schedule it with him.
We are. Even though he sits across the room from us, we're going to be like, Bill, when do you have, what's your schedule? Can we set up a time when we can all just sit together and talk?
It's going to be tough. Because even if we set aside, typically we'll be like, it'll be like 20 minutes, 30 minutes. He will talk way more than that. And I can say that because I know he won't listen to this. I feel free.
Well, today's guest was also a talker.
Yes, we talked a lot.
Yeah.
Just tangent after tangent.
Yes, it should have been called the Diversions with Victor and Andrea. Because we diverted a lot. So we talked to Kristen Pflum. She's not going to be an employee at WKYT. She's coming to work for Fox 56, kind of the other channel here that we also produce news for. Mm-hmm. So she'll be working in the building with us. Right.
I will rarely see her, if ever.
If you see her, something went really wrong for one of you two.
For one of us. On one end or the other, something did not go well.
And I may see her occasionally as she's getting in and I'm leaving.
Yeah, she'll be doing the 10 o'clock news. Obviously, a lot of people will remember her from her time at LEX 18. So we're talking to a former competitor.
Yes, although also a former coworker of mine. That's the other thing a lot of people don't know.
Same.
I was her photographer whenever she was there, and so
everybody thinks I was an intern at 18. I was not.
I've talked to people who still work there, and they're like, "Oh yeah, didn't Andrea intern?"
Everyone thought I was an intern. I was actually employed. I was an editor and an associate producer when they launched the morning weekend show.
And look at how we're shining now.
I know, we've come a long way.
See, Robert Thomas just plucking talent, putting it to use. I guess technically we're talent. I don't know. Anyway.
Well, that's our title. I don't,
Yeah.
It's a loose one.
It is a very loose one. All right, well, let's get to the podcast, or to the interview. It's a long one, but I think it's a really good one. It was interesting for me to hear from her about her time in Chicago, because you imagine this glamorous studio and setup and everything, and it sounds like they kind of have the same issues every newsroom does.
And that's what I've always wondered, because you'll think about things every now and then, especially on days when you're having a rough day, or like you've had a rough week. You're just like, I could go somewhere, I could do it. But then, it's the same thing no matter where you go. You're always going to have the same issues. That's just any workplace.
That's right. All right. Well, here we go. Here's our conversation with Kristen Pflum.
Let's start it right there.
All right, there we go. Yes.
Pukey.
So actually, not our first infant on the podcast. Today we're here with Kristen Pflum.
Hey guys.
Hello. So good to have you.
Thanks.
We're so happy to have you back in Lexington. What is it like?
Oh my gosh. We knew, I think, that Chicago was going to be kind of a short-term thing. We didn't know for how many years, but the whole time we were gone, we just wished we were back. And it wasn't like Chicago wasn't fulfilling for us or wasn't awesome in so many ways, but it's not home. This after 11 years at Channel 18 and living in Lexington, it became home, and we put our roots here, and my oldest son is here. My sister is now here. In the time that we've been in Chicago, my grandma and grandpa have moved to Danville. My aunt and uncle are in Harrodsburg.
Really?
My cousin is a Lexington firefighter.
I didn't realize they all followed you.
Yeah, the whole fam moved down here. So we're just surrounded by everyone now, and it's so great to be home.
And it's
so
nice
great.
when you have little ones like we have with us today.
And yes, I've got Cruz here. sitting in my lap, trying not to be fussy. This is my problem child.
Oh my gosh, I love
This
it.
is the tough one.
Now, we all know that you and Lee Cruz were good friends. Is he named after Lee Cruz once and for all?
Well, that was a joke that was made on Twitter, and it kind of grew some legs, and everyone was like, what? You really? The timing of it all was like, you're in support of Lee, which Lee is a dear, dear friend of ours. But no, he's not. Cruz
just already there.
was on our short list of names when we named Enzo almost 2 years ago. And so when we decided to have another, we went back to that list, and this is the one that popped off.
There it was.
I like
we have
unique
Enzo
names.
with a Z. Let's have Cruz with a Z too. So we have Colton, Cruz, and Enzo.
I
There you
love
go.
it.
So one of the things we normally start with this is we ask people how they got started. Growing up, were you a fan of the news?
I would say no. In fact, I would make fun of my dad, like constantly coming home from work and turning
the
on
news
the
is
news.
on.
Yeah, and I'm like, is there anything else we can watch? Full House or Family Matters or something like that?
When you're a kid, it's not very exciting.
No, it was not at all. And I say that I was never really interested in this, and my grandma and grandpa say, now, Chrissy, wait a second. We have some old tapes of you playing radio in the bedroom. So I would apparently record off the country station in Martinsville, Indiana, and do some playbacks and talk over
You would
the songs.
DJ?
I would DJ a little bit. It's kind of whatever you called it. It would not look like that. And please, Grandma and Grandpa, do not ever bring those tapes out. Apparently they do exist. But I guess I had a knack for it early on. But I really didn't figure out that this was what I wanted to do until my junior year of college.
Oh, wow.
I was a political science major. My mom signed me up at DePaul. I'm like, Mom, what am I getting into? This is so far over my head. I'm not interested. This is what Dad should be doing. And I took, during one of the winter term breaks, I did a radio show. And I thought, well, this is kind of cool, but I'm just sitting in this sterile room and there's no one to talk to, and maybe I should try something else. And we didn't have a TV station at DePaul at the time. And so they said, well, let's start one. So I don't know if you guys remember Nicole Pence. I'm sure you do.
I do.
Nicole was a DePaul alum. And so we literally sat a picnic table and chairs up with a curtain backdrop. Oh, yeah. It was... You guys should see their faces right now. I'm not kidding. Like, it
No, it
was
sounds
as
high-tech.
amateur as it gets. And we started the TV station. So now it's funny because I'll have DePaul people. Oh, there's those lungs. Yeah. I'll have DePaul people say, hey, you're the girl that's on the wall at the TV station. And I said, yeah, I founded that. I was part of that.
That's awesome.
Sort of my
Now,
claim to fame that I
They
have
don't
this
have
like...
to know it was at a picnic table on a resume. That looks good.
No. But it was such a huge... we had a great mentor who had been in the business for many, many years. And so he sort of headed up the program and we all caught on. And then I was fortunate enough to get an internship down in Fort Myers, Florida at the ABC, NBC duopoly. And I learned a ton of just on-the-job stuff. And that's where we all get our knowledge.
Oh, yeah.
Small.
That's where you really build it up is watching someone do the job day to day, going out there. And by the end of my internship, I was a nervous wreck. I mean, you guys know how it is going in and you're like, these people are professionals and they know what they're doing. And here I am. I've never done this before. And oh my God, they're going to make me shoot a stand up. No. This is going to take me 437 takes. And they did. But I had a guy that just held my hand through all of it. And he took me out of my comfort zone. And I thought, this is really cool. I mean, you guys know it's different every day. You never know what you're getting into. You get to leave your work at the office. I don't have to do expense
Right.
reports when I go home
Exactly.
or send many emails. So I love it. And it just stuck.
It's always interesting when you're with interns and you have them shoot stand-ups, just kind of stuff to get them to know what it feels like. And everybody starts so small.
Oh, yeah.
And you have to tell them, no,
yeah.
it feels weird, but you have to be bigger.
Right.
And it's just
And all
interesting.
the little crutches we want to use, like always writing stuff down, and that's why the mentor that I had was awesome. I mean, he was out there, it was down in Fort Myers, Florida. So we did a lot of stuff on the beach and, there was a seaweed pile that there was like some toxic algae or something that they had plowed up on the beach. He wanted to climb the seaweed and he was like, Kristen, you're going to do it too. I said, come again.
Say what?
Yeah. And he did. And it was an awesome
Like,
stand up.
it's toxic. That's why we're here.
That's the story, Tom. But he did. And of course it made for really great TV.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah, he was one of the best in the biz.
And it's so good to have people like that because, especially sometimes with women, they're not as supportive of each other. So,
Right.
like, having those mentors, they mean so much.
Well, and in a newsroom, I was in one for 11 years in Lexington, and we watched a lot of interns come and go that really weren't that driven and didn't want to do much more than answer phones. But for the ones who did want to go out, absolutely wanted to take them under my wing and give them everything that Tom gave me because it was such an invaluable experience.
There's a big difference between somebody who's coming in just to get their credit hours and somebody who actually wants
Really
to learn.
wants
And
to
it
do
kind of
it.
inspires you to, I want to help them.
Right.
Yeah.
And you want to see them, you sort of follow their path. There's a girl over at Channel 18 right now that I took under my wing when she was an intern. And she started in Bowling Green, and now she's there. And I just love watching her grow. I can kind of say, I had a hand in that. And I can't wait to see what she does next.
Well, Nick Oliver here was an intern. Or not intern, he worked part-time.
Oh,
That's what
yeah.
it was, part-time web guy. And so, but he wanted to be on air.
He's so
and
good.
Then he went to SAZ for a while and then came
Well,
back.
and you were a photographer.
I was
You used
gonna
to
say,
shoot
you
my
guys go
stories,
way back.
Victor
I was gonna
Puente.
say, so that's one of the things when we were talking about you being on here next week or last week. I was like, yeah, it's going to be interesting because Kristen probably remembers me as like the goofy photog, and now I'm
Tell
I don't think
all
you'll
the-
ever
The
drop
goofy
the goofy
reporter.
title, Victor.
I want
That's
that
what
dirt.
makes you Victor.
Let's dig. What
Yeah.
did he do? What was a young
You know
Victor
the
Puente?
story I always remember, and God, your brother's gonna hate me when you always used to talk about your brother. He's not chubby. He's healthy. He's healthy. And I thought, man, this brother's gonna grow up with some self-care issues.
he's bigger than I am
Vincent, is
now.
that his
That's
name?
Vincent. Yeah.
Aw.
Yeah, he could take me down now if he wanted
But
to.
I
So
think
yeah.
it was all in love.
Yeah,
But
it
I
was.
remember you always talking about your brother. And us going out to Powell County.
Yep. Every time we go to Powell
you'd
County,
always
I'd know
the
everybody.
little spots to go to, and everyone would come up and talk to Victor.
Of course.
That's
of
still
course.
the case whenever I go to Powell County. It's gotten, believe it or not, now that I'm on air, it's gotten more
Worse.
intense. Yes, every time I go. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, they love you.
There you
Yeah.
go. That's what
Soak
it
it
is.
all in.
So, since you weren't really interested in broadcasting, what were you into? Like maybe growing up, was there something else that you were maybe
Horses.
passionate about? Horses.
Yeah, which is why I actually took the job in Lexington, because my first job right out of college was in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And I say I worked there for like 5 minutes because that's what it felt like. I think it was actually 4 months. And then our company was sold and we were just laid off.
Oh,
we were
man.
told on a Saturday that as of Tuesday, we would no longer have jobs. So that was my first dose of the real
And you're
world.
already broke in your first
You're already
station.
broke. I'm
Like-
in an apartment lease. I
Yes.
had just gotten a new
Yeah.
car.
Oh my gosh.
With a car payment. And I thought,
Great.
so this is how the real world works. Okay. So I started obviously sending out some tapes. I didn't have much. What did I really have being there 4 months? And I got a bite from Lexington. I remember the day that Tim Gilbert called me from Channel 18 because I'm like looking. I'm going, Tim Gilbert, like I didn't send you anything. How did you find me? And he said, well, I used to have ties up there to Fort Wayne, and I heard about your situation. We're looking for someone. And at the same time, the place where I had interned down in Fort Myers was looking for someone. So they had flown me down there for an interview. And, okay, do I want to live on a beach in Fort Myers, or do I want to live in Kentucky? And I came here, and the news director at Channel 18 took me around, and I just fell in love with it. And the fact that there's so many horses around here, and that was my pride and joy at the time. I said, well, maybe I can get back into horses. I'll tell you what, I was here all those years, never once.
Of
Never once
course.
rode a
got on
horse. Yeah.
Never once. But obviously I made the right decision and fell in love with this place in Fort Myers. I can go visit the beach.
There you go.
Anytime.
It's kind of a common story. We see people who come here planning to be here for 2 or 3 years,
A
do their
stop,
stint.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
Well,
then
that's
they
what
end
I
up-
thought I was going to do. And then life happens. I had my son too, and you obviously have to consider their interests. And I thought, I have no reason to leave. My family was in Indianapolis, 3 hours away. And then everyone started moving down here. So I thought, okay, well, maybe this is where I'm meant to be. And I truly do believe that this all happened for a reason.
I think you're the perfect person to ask this because I feel like people who are just getting into the industry, they're looking at market size. That's all
Oh
they
my
care
gosh.
about. But obviously you came here. We're kind of a mid-sized market, a good-sized market. But, there are so many people that's all they care about is that number. But you really need to go where you're happy, right?
Well, and the grass is not always greener. I'll tell you that. And having worked in the number 3 market in the country, they have the same problems that we have here in Lexington and that you would have in Bowling Green or Fort Wayne or you name it. Equipment breaks, budget issues, staff calling in and you don't have enough people to cover a story. I mean, it happens there too. And it was an invaluable experience for me. I mean, I wouldn't have traded it for the world. It's very cutthroat. I mean, took me out of my comfort zone. It made me grow as a journalist immensely. I mean, they operate more like a network news station. I mean, anything breaking nationally, worldwide. I mean, we jumped on the air when President Trump ordered the airstrikes on Syria. Wow. And I'm like, all of a sudden, I have to become
an expert
on Bashir Assad. And
suddenly that political science almost degree. Yeah.
And I mean, that's why you always have to be brushed up on everything and all your current events. And that's what I tell interns, like, know everything. Just always read all the headlines every morning. Make sure you at least sort of know a little bit about each story, because I literally had 4 minutes to jump on the air that day and start talking about that. And I thought, oh my God. I mean, my heart's pounding out of my chest. But that's how it is. And we were a station that was owned by Fox News Corporation. I mean, so when I did my
one step, yeah.
Oh my gosh, when I did my interview there and they taped it and they said, all right, we got to send this off, up to
chain.
Rupert,
oh,
and
wow.
We have to have everyone okay it. And then Shari Berg from Fox News is watching our morning show every morning, and you were always on pins and needles.
Pressure.
Yeah, and it makes you grow. I mean, it's a sink or swim market, and I learned so much. And just being when the Las Vegas massacre happened, I was on the morning show then, so with the time difference and everything, it was just a few hours before we came on air, and I was 2 days away from giving birth to Enzo, so I was massively pregnant, and we were on the air for 9 hours that day doing live interviews with former FBI agents and Homeland Security guys, and just people who run big events in Chicago, because obviously huge crowds gather. Lollapalooza was coming up at the time, and so it's just a lot, and you have to be on top of it. But I wouldn't trade the experience for anything. I grew a lot, and I just felt like. But the one thing that I was missing up there, even though it offered me so many things and challenges that were good for me, I just lacked the relationships that I had here and the connections. I mean, I could rattle off 10 stories that I remember to you out of Lexington of families that I did multiple stories with over the course of a decade and cried with and laughed with and went to their birthday parties. And you become so close to these people that you meet through tragedy usually, and you build this bond that's just beautiful and unbreakable and just will go on for years and years. And I never had that up there. And it's hard to establish that with such a big city,
many
and they have
people.
such a big footprint, in the area that they cover. And I really, really missed that. And that was what played in my decision to come back to news, because, I thought, well, maybe I'll come back and get out of the business and go into some sales job or something like that. But I just couldn't. I mean, my heart was still in telling stories and connecting with the people who, even though I left, have stayed in touch with me all these years. And
I saw you tweet about
that was
Doodle
really
Peel
cool.
when
Oh my
he retired.
gosh, Doodle! What are we gonna do without
I
Doodle?
know.
I know, man.
Oh my gosh!
So for those of you who don't know, Doodle Peel, longtime deputy in the Jessamine County Sheriff's Department, good friend of Andrea.
Yeah, my dad hired Doodle when he was sheriff. They were very good friends. And he's just one of the nicest people. And he always spoke so highly of you.
Aww.
He loved you.
Well, I just adored him. And it's so funny. Even to watch Doodle grow into that role, because he became the
so nervous, I
spokesperson
bet.
for the Jessamine County Sheriff's Department that we would call when we would need an interview. And I remember the first couple, I think I had to stop and say, Doodle.
Honey, it's going to
And
be
just
okay.
grab his arm. Say, Doodle, just talk to me like we're talking as friends. Mm-hmm. And he's, okay, Kristen, because he kind of talks faster,
he's so cute.
And oh my God, I just fell in love with him.
I know.
And we became great friends. And like I said, I'd call him up most of the time for a story, but sometimes I'd just call him, hey, Doodle, how you been? And we'd talk about family or whatever was going on in life. And what a ride he had. And I'm so happy for him that he gets to take some time to himself now. But yeah, there are many like him that, you build relationships with, and they become part of you. And I miss that.
And it's almost like when you're calling them for a story, it's not like you're reaching out to a contact. It's like you're calling a friend and being like, hey, and
right, exactly. And there's a respect there.
Yes.
I mean, they understand that you have a job to do, but you also understand that there's some things that they can't say and reveal, and
which is part of building that relationship of trust, because
my
when they let you
gosh.
know, look, here's something we can't
Right.
release this right now,
Right.
and you trust that there's a reason
Right.
that okay, this must be
Right.
something that I understand. That.
Another big piece of advice I give to the newbies, you can't burn the people that are helping you out and making your job easy. Because when I left here, that was one of the things. I'm like, oh my gosh, do I want to make this big jump to Chicago? Because I got to start all over,
Make
and I'm going
all
to be at
new
the bottom
contacts.
of the totem pole, and I'm not going to know anyone. And if I have to call someone from a story, because it just was so easy. I had connected with so many people. I always knew who to call, and they would always trust me, with the information they were giving out. And if they could sort of give me a little bit, but I couldn't report it, we were on that understanding too. So I hope that they find that I have not changed,
Right.
and we can just slide right back into that, because I really enjoyed those relationships.
So obviously you're back in a familiar place, but you're in unfamiliar territory. You were saying when you came in, she was like, I've never been here before. And she's like, what
past
door do
this
I come
place
in?
on Winchester Road so many times, and I'm like, do they go in the front door? That's a big one. Does that even function? Do I drive around
Just
the
ornamental,
side?
yeah. Well, this place is a maze. First off, you're going to learn.
Oh,
that.
really?
Yeah.
Well, it's beautiful from the outside, and whoever does your groundskeeping, kudos.
So
It
what-
always looks so pretty.
What was it like for you whenever you started getting the call for Chicago? I mean, did you realize it's going to be life altering, or what was
Well,
that like?
So I decided to get an agent, and that was uncharted territory for me. And you don't know who to trust. You don't know if they're just going to take your money, if they're really going to, do some digging. But I found that a lot of those big time jobs aren't posted anywhere, not for just the average person to go find. So they have their finger on the pulse of what's coming open in the coming months. And I'll tell you, the first place I interviewed that he sent me was Atlanta. And it was a bomb, guys.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Didn't go well.
I wanted
What
to crawl
happened?
under the biggest rock I could find and never show my face in this industry again. I know. I wanted to scream too.
He's upset too.
Cruz is upset
Oh my
just
gosh.
thinking about it.
So, sorry about that. Hey, they can hear that on
This
these
is belly.
mics. So, some places will try to throw you in your audition
To see how you react.
every way they can. And they did. And there were some things that I don't think they had planned on going wrong that went wrong too, just to add insult to injury.
Sure.
And so I'm already a nervous wreck, coming from Lexington, going to make this big jump to Atlanta, possibly. People who have been in this business for decades, they have this ease of being on air. They have the ability to talk off the cuff. They know their area. They know all the streets. They deal with a chopper in the air all the time, and a set that moves all over the place, and a jib camera that follows you from one side of the set to the other, and all these elements thrown in. And I had tried to mentally prepare myself for that, but that was not nearly enough. So they had sort of told me what the audition was going to be like. And I get in there, and it's like, okay, we're going through some reads and all that stuff. Well, then the prompter goes out. Okay, fine. You roll with that all the time. You go to your scripts.
Yeah.
Well, then they start moving me around the sets. They start me on one side, and it was like during a commercial break, and they say, all right, when the prompter comes back up and we come back on, the screen behind you is a touch screen. You can zoom in on the streets. Keep in mind, I have to touch the screen and turn one way or address the prompter that is totally on the other side. And, we're going to throw in street names that have, Native American
wow.
spellings and pronunciations. Just fantastic. So you can just try to wing it, as much as you can. But the screen wouldn't work when I zoomed in on Tamiami Trail or whatever it was. And so as I'm trying to fumble my way through that read and story, they get in my earpiece and say, we have breaking news. There's a hostage situation that whatever they call their chopper, is up over, and there are 2 women and 3 children inside, and the man has made threats that he's got a gun, and you're going to do that while you're walking to the other side of the set, and the jib's going to follow you. Oh my, I just lost it. I think I literally stopped in the middle and just stopped. I said, just bust this. We're going to start over. I mean, I was so my mind was all over the place. I was so frustrated. So then we tried to come back and they had the prompter in the wrong spot. Okay, you're trying to throw me again. I see what's going on. You've done this 30 times already. I'm going to get this. So I go to my scripts. Well, then they bust that one. Prompter's in the wrong spot. I said, I know.
I'm aware.
I know. I went to what I know, okay? Just keep going, because now I'm in a groove, and now you're going to mess that up too. And then I had to do a Q&A about this one story, and I think I remember at one time I just said, I lost my train of thought. I don't know what I was going to say. I actually said that during the audition.
Well, I think we've all been there. Like, there are some days when you're just off. And no matter what you do, you can't gain your footing. It's like a continuous fall.
They got in my head.
Yeah.
And they won that day. But I left there and I thought, do I even want to work for a place like this? If your newscast goes this bad on a daily basis, because again, some of those things, like the one time the jib didn't move with me, so we had to stop and start again. Not my fault. That was a camera
How often is that
operator.
going to happen? Yeah.
Yeah. The prompter and all that stuff. I said, if you guys have this many problems, I don't want to work here. This sounds like a train wreck newscast anyway, so get me out of here. I could not wait to get on that plane and get back to Lexington, and never wanted to talk about. Thanks, guys. Thanks, guys, for rehashing one of the worst moments.
I'm sorry.
Did you feel like that though? Like prepared you whenever you went to Chicago?
Well, I was terrified because I thought I can't have another one of these. I mean, my confidence is just going to tank if I have another one of these. But Chicago was much gentler on me. They told me, we're going to talk about 3 subjects, and it could be this or this, but, maybe if something breaks overnight, be prepared to talk about that. And I think we talked about, at the time, because it was coming into the political season, is Donald Trump going to be the GOP candidate? So we talked about that. There was a big lottery, like $500 million or over $500 million. So we talked about that, and then a local story on, I believe it was Northwestern's campus, about something about a woman and a rights that she felt was being taken away. So we pretty much rolled with that and just had a back and forth. And then they asked me, why I appreciated the job as a journalist. I actually told the story. You probably remember this. I don't know if you were my photographer then. The rat story on Race Street.
Oh, I remember the rats.
Do you remember?
Yep.
Were you with me that day?
I was with you that
Okay.
day. Yes. There's a lady who loved her rats.
Well, yes.
What?
And this is a story that I'll never forget. And when I talk about what journalism means to me and the impact that we have, I always think of this story.
I'll never forget the smell.
Yes, it was dead middle of summer. I mean, probably mid-July, coming up on August, super hot like it is now. And we get a phone call into the newsroom, and they said, you got to get out here on Race Street. There are rats everywhere. And our assignment editor's like, oh, okay, let's see. So they sent our chief photog out, and he calls back in the newsroom and says, yep, there are rats everywhere. Send Kristen out here. So Kristen, still being pretty new, walks in like her 4-inch open-toed heels and her little pencil skirt. And they're like, you're going to Race Street and you're going to cover rats. I was like, sorry. I'm sorry. And so I go out there, and no joke, there are rats running in the street, congregated around this one house. And so we start talking to people.
The grass is tall, and you can see the grass moving.
There's garbage cans that are moving. These rats are just traveling like in packs or whatever you call a bunch of. Yes. And so the story was these people that lived on Race Street had been calling the health department for a while, the police department, trying to get any help to get rid of these rats. Well, there was a woman, and she... basically, they had eaten away her floor of her house. I mean, it was bad. It was very, very sad, the conditions she was living in. But to keep them out of her house, she would bring dog food bags home and set them outside the house so that the rats would feed on that and not go in her house. Well, obviously, they were all congregating around there and just getting thicker and thicker and more active.
She was
and
basically
the people
creating
that
a
lived
giant
there,
rat colony.
Oh my gosh.
Oh
And
my
the people that
gosh.
lived there were fed up, and they had tried everything. So they finally called the news station. So we went out. And no joke, within 3 hours, the health department was out there, the fire department was out there, the police were out there, and they got this poor woman out of the house. They moved her. The Catholic Action Center stepped in.
She
and
needed
helped.
help,
She
yeah.
needed help. And
She considered them her pets.
we do have a soundbite.
She said
they were her pets.
Oh,
but
man.
I'll never forget the other soundbite. Well, there were two. One woman says, "Them rats are as big as my feet, and I wear a size 10." Not kidding. It's on YouTube. I'll have to pull it up for you. And
Our
then
local Sweet Brown.
yeah. There was another guy who came out and he said, rat poison. We need some live ammunition up in here. So yeah, and he was not joking.
And then the story
there
continued because the landlord decided to mow the grass.
mow the grass.
There were all these rats in the grass.
Well, and then they were dead rats too because they
then
had put out poison. So now it stunk to high heaven.
Because he
and
was
they're
just
mowing
chopping
the grass.
up these rats.
Oh,
Right.
man.
But I tell that story because that's the impact we have. I mean, these poor people had reached out for weeks to try to get rid of them, and no one was listening.
Mm-hmm.
And we come out there and raise awareness on it and, put it out there. And this woman got the help she needed. The rats were gone. They eventually dozed the house. Like, they got rid of that house
have to.
altogether. Right. But I got some flack from, and I won't mention her name because she's actually a dear friend of mine that I work with in several other stories. But she called me that day and she said, she ripped me a new one. You're exploiting this woman and you put her story out there and you just embarrassed her. And I said, look, ma'am, I won't use her name. I said, we did some good. I feel good about this story. She was willing to talk with us. If she would have said no, I wouldn't have put the camera in her face. We were there to show what the story was, and that were all these rats running this neighborhood. And I said within a couple of hours, she got the help she needed, and she's out of there. My job is done. That's all we wanted. I don't believe it was exploiting her. I don't believe it was sensational. We drew attention to this story. Now it's a non-story. She's in a better place. Everyone's happy.
Yeah, she may never have made that step
And
without
at
it.
the end of the
she thought everything
conversation,
was
we were
fine.
cordial and everything was good. But I think, at first she just saw it as, we were just looking at it as a news story. Well, not at all. It became an infamous one for the longest time. I walk, you're the rat story girl. I'm like, am I ever going to shake this? So, but I tell that story because it does show the impact that we can have and the good that we can do.
It's
and
crazy.
It made me
just
feel good.
News camera showing up, how much of an impact people, especially people in power, will suddenly be like, okay, we need to do something.
But then there was the chicken story in Nicholasville where they didn't get it fixed. It was like basically the exact same situation. There was a guy in Nicholasville who built his dream home, and this guy moves in next to him that has all these chickens
Miranda
that just
did it.
wouldn't stop. Like
They may have been, who knows what they were being used for,
right.
allegedly. Mm-hmm. But they were
Like
very
I
loud.
wonder what you do with a bunch of chickens in cages.
Oh,
and,
gosh.
yeah, but it's like there was nothing they could do.
Legally, that was that guy's
Yeah,
property, and
so
so
it's
now
tough. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. That's the hardest part of the job. It's like you feel so connected, and then sometimes you can't help.
Right.
But
I could rattle off so many of these stories that I
remember the
that-
panhandler guy.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, he's still around.
He's not in prison anymore?
Didn't we have him not too long ago? He got arrested again.
Oh, when I left, he was in prison, and I was really excited about that. We finally got him on federal charges on tax.
I haven't seen him in a while. I know exactly what you're talking about, but
well, he had a mohawk this time.
Oh, did he? I don't remember
Yeah.
that.
I thought he was bald.
Well, maybe I'm thinking of two different people.
You might be thinking of a different. Oh yeah, no, you're thinking of. Yes,
Oh,
you
no,
are
am I
thinking of a
thinking
different
of?
one.
You're thinking,
of Sherman
of
Denny.
Sherman
yes.
Denny, yes.
And he sent me a friend request on like Instagram or something. Maybe it was someone posing as him, but yeah, he was the wannabe.
Yeah, that was a different. We've covered.
bogus
Oh, okay.
beggar.
So he was okay.
Yes.
He was
So
inspired
did
by
he
the
get federal
original.
charges because he was imitating?
He got federal charges thanks to me because that was the
Nice.
only way we could get him locked up because everything else was just sort of a slap on the wrist and plus he wouldn't show up for court anyway. So, but turns out there was a part of the story that he actually told that was true. Many years ago, his mother sued Honda of America because of a motorcycle or ATV accident he had and won this big settlement. And he blew through all of that. Well, had some injuries from it, so he was collecting a disability check. And so he was claiming on air that he made $60,000 to $100,000 panhandling, and the Social Security agents got in touch with me, and they're like, "Oh, well then you don't need this disability check that we're writing you monthly. So, if you're going to continue to collect, we're going to have some issues." And apparently he did, and so they finally brought him up on basically Social Security fraud or disability fraud, and he got some time. So when I left for Chicago, his butt was sitting in
Well, he
prison.
probably still is then. I think I got confused.
I'm going to have to look him
And that's one of
up.
those stories, because it's one thing to panhandle and people know what's up, but when you're presenting something that's just not real.
Well, that was the news gods were with us that day, because we had, if you remember the original story, it was around Christmas time, and Lexington police called a news conference because he was soliciting all these people in high traffic shopping areas and stuff. And Lexington police wanted to warn people that he's a fraud. Don't give him your money. So that's why we went to the police department that day to talk to them about Gary Thompson. Here's what he does. Here's his spiel. Don't fall for it. Don't give him your money. Well, we were all, as reporters, kind of standing in the lobby right after this news conference, and I saw someone in a wheelchair roll by, and I thought, that looks just like the guy in the picture. So I sort of covertly tap Brian Gilbert, and I say, Brian, let's go. And try not to draw the attention of the other reporters. But I run out there, and he's, rolling down Main Street, and I said, Gary. And he turned around and looked at me and said, yeah, totally normal voice. And I said, what are you up to, man? We just heard about what you're doing. And that's when he went into his character and refused to come out of it for a good 15 minutes. And I said, I'm not stupid. We can keep this up all day. And that's when he, decided to just tell us that he was very proud of what he was doing and made $60,000 to $100,000 a year, and that he's done it before and he's going to continue. And so everything lined up that day.
Wow.
But it was frustrating because we did keep seeing him. He said he had a come to Jesus moment after that. We found him outside the Catholic Action Center, and I'm going to get my life together, and what I did was so wrong. And then 2 weeks later, I think he was in Frankfurt doing it because we got a call from the police up there. But he'd, be charged and arrested, and then they'd let him go, and he'd never show up for court. So until we got him on the federal charges, they couldn't do anything about it.
Doing it. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, what a story.
Some of those stories stick with you. So when did you start looking to return to Kentucky?
Well, my middle one, it's crazy to say my middle one. I have 3 boys. Lord help me. Is going to be 2. And so probably within the next year or 2, I'll be thinking about preschools. And then my oldest one is starting middle school. He just started middle school. So I thought, man, okay. He's coming, and my oldest one is coming into a time where there's going to be some new challenges, maybe friends that aren't always as genuine, and Colton sort of lets his guard down a little bit, and I felt uncomfortable being so far away in the event that he would need mom. And we'd always been able to make it work. We saw him all the time in Chicago. With my parents being halfway in Indy, it was a perfect little meeting place. But I thought, he's going to need his mama. And then Enzo's going to be thinking about schools. And Chicago public schools, have you heard anything about them? Oof, they are not good. And so we would have had to have either moved to the suburbs or gone the private route. And that wasn't something we were interested in. So I think the timing of it was something we were thinking about. And then my husband got an offer to come back with his company that he was with. And it just sort of the stars aligned. And we started talking about maybe me doing the 10 o'clock over on Fox. And I thought, this is just too perfect. Again, it's like when I came to Lexington, it was just a blessing in disguise. And everything lined up that we needed to. And so we started looking at houses and found one that we thought at the time would be a great idea to renovate while I was 8.5 months pregnant and living in another state and taking care of a toddler. And my husband's like, oh, don't worry about it. We got 4 months. It'll be so done by
Plenty
the time you're here.
Yeah.
Victor and Andrea, my shower is still down to the studs. We put a vanity in this weekend. I thought I could cry alligator tears.
I mean, I've got some red carpet in our den that
ooh, I love that.
We were going to switch out as soon as, within a few years of living there. And
it's on the list, right? Yeah. So I have been living in a house that is still not completely done with a toddler who's very curious about wall outlets.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes.
And it doesn't matter what sort of baby-proofing items I put in those outlets. He finds a way to find keys, and I'm like, no.
He's gifted. He's so smart.
He's going to fry himself, and then he's going to be...
You don't want to be on the news that way.
No. So that has been a challenge, but all happy challenges.
Well, is there anything that you're anxious about or excited about? like, what are you expecting coming into a new environment?
I feel like, because I haven't worked since May 31st was my last day in Chicago because I was uber pregnant and now I'm on maternity leave. And it's always kind of like your first day of school going back, and
it's a new place, but you know some of the people.
Oh, yeah. And
you know the town.
Exactly. And working alongside Marvin, I mean, just salt of the earth guy.
Such a good guy.
I cannot wait to work with him. And Jennifer Reefer says, Marvin's a really funny guy. You kind of just need someone to pull it out of him. I'm like, okay, I got this. So Marvin, if you're listening, gear up, buddy. Because I'm bringing the fun.
So Marvin and I poor Garrett sits between us, and we are each other's audiences for the bad joke. Like we will rattle something off, and I'll look at Marvin, and he'll same thing, and so he'll just say one liner, and I'll giggle.
He's an enabler.
No one else
you're enablers for each other.
No one else in the newsroom will laugh, but we'll just look at each other like, all right, that's it.
I see you, buddy. I see you.
That's so get ready for that.
Well, we may have to have you back after you start to be like, okay, now
how
let's
was it? I was talking to Robert yesterday, and I said, I feel like it's like my first day of school coming back. Well, today will just be orientation. We'll wait until October 1st. So.
Well, that's the other thing. You're going to be even if you haven't worked with some of these people, you're going to be in a building full of people that you've seen,
Oh yeah. And I never stopped watching Lexington news. I mean, as much as I kept up on things going on in Chicago, I was constantly. That's why I remember your chicken story vaguely. But, I've tried to keep my finger on the pulse of everything going on here because I did in the back of my mind, want to be back. And it always helps to know the stories that are ongoing. I mean, how many times do we do follow-ups on follow-ups on follow-ups? So,
but you scratch that itch. I think everybody wonders, like, what could I get to, like, top 5, top 10 market? And then when you get there, I mean, I was working among a bunch of people who just had network.
They just wanted to get,
exactly. And I never had the itch for network. I never did. And I don't know if it's because I just feel like, and maybe it's not, again, that disconnect where you're traveling all the time. You're never really like staying in one community for any length of time and getting to know the people. And to me, that's what the job is all about. And so it's never been something I was interested in, but I worked with all the people who did. Like, this was just there. One more step for them. I thought, no, I want to go back to Lexington.
Just funny because, you think about working with people who are like, Chicago or New York, that's their goal. Mm-hmm. But then you get to Chicago, New York, and it turns out, no, they've got, they're all looking upward too.
And there were some days I would just sit there and shake my head. I'm like, this is really the number 3 market in the country? Like, this camera hasn't worked for 3 weeks,
right?
And I don't have a photographer to go shoot this. And so, like I say, the grass is not always greener. I did it because, at the time I had just gotten married to my husband, and I wanted to start planning a little more financially, and you'd make that big of a step, and I could start saving some money for my son. And didn't know we'd have these other 2. And so, it was nice in that regard. And for Colton, oh my gosh, I mean, it was the best of both worlds. He got to have all of his friends here in Lexington. And then in the summer months, we'd rip and run around Chicago and all the world-class museums and festivals and restaurants and the lake. I mean, that lake is next to none.
You had
awesome.
A surprise wedding.
I
Real
did.
quick, I feel like we've just stretched this out so far, but I think that's the coolest thing.
My husband was not on board, let me tell you that. He was like, we're never going to pull this off. You're never going to. I'm like, don't underestimate me. Don't tell me I can't do something, because I will do everything in my power to prove you wrong. And he was just really nervous and really skeptical about how we would pull it off. But we sort of had it working in our favor that we were leaving, or that I was at least testing the waters about leaving, because that was our out. We had gotten engaged, and I said, we're going to do a destination wedding with family. So we're just going to get this engagement party together. You guys just all come, and let's just have a good time. It'll be real low key. Yeah. And so he said, well, how are you going to get people there at a certain time? Because you put 7 to 11 on the thing, but you're going to have people wandering in at 10 o'clock.
9:30 or something, yeah.
And so I put on there, please be here by 7:30 or 7:45 for like a formal introduction of our family. We just want to, introduce
nice.
everyone. And so very few people knew what was happening. In fact, we each had like 4 or 5 bridesmaids and his men. And they didn't know till the night before. I told the girls, I said, wear a black dress. The guys were just supposed to be in a suit. And we told him all the night before. And I said, all right, here's how it's going to go. I had given the list of songs to the DJ. And I said, start playing this about 5 minutes out. And so they all knew to gather my parents. And so they started playing that Bruno Mars "Marry You" or "Marry Me" or something, and everyone's kind of like, what's going on? And then all of a sudden, like, my sister came out dancing with one of my husband's friends, and then my husband comes out in a tux with his mom on his arm, and he had been in a suit before. And then they changed it to oh my gosh, I cannot, Kip Moore. I forget the song. Oh my gosh.
Something about a truck.
Yeah, that's a perfect wedding entrance song, Andrea.
I don't know country music, so I'm just like, I don't know what it might be. Could have been any song.
I know.
No, but so that started playing, and it was slower, and Colton walked up to get me at the back, and my dad, and then we walked down in wedding dress, and everyone was like, oh my God, there were tears.
That's
and
awesome.
there were people saying, I got to hold my beer while I watched a wedding. And I was like, it's
my kind of
that's
wedding.
cool or not. Yeah, but that's what it was. And everyone afterwards was like, that was the coolest thing, because it was just so low key.
Yeah.
All we said, I had been married before, and we spent all the money and had the horse-drawn carriage, and it's over like that.
Right.
And you spend all this money. And so we're not doing that again. We wanted to have just some little hors d'oeuvres that were passed. We got cupcakes, and we had an open bar for everyone. That was like the big expense.
What more do you need?
Well, and the best part of the wedding is the time that you spend with your friends.
Exactly.
I mean,
And we actually got to have that, because it wasn't all stuffy, like we got to go pose for pictures and we got to cut the cake, and, just everyone come and have a good time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I still get people talking about, that was just the coolest thing. And, tell me how to do it, because we might try to replicate it. I said, it just all sort of worked out for us. We got this guys together. And
I love it.
So if I ever get a weird invite from Andrea,
I don't think I can pull it off. I can't keep a secret.
that's true.
well, my husband is terrible at keeping secrets, so I didn't think he'd be able to, but he did.
Ooh, that
I'll
is
give you
something
props
to
for that.
keep in mind as you start your journey here. If you ever have something you don't want everyone to know, don't tell Andrea.
Now, if it's
Don't.
serious,
Noted.
I don't know about that at all.
if it's too juicy, like fun juicy, I'm gonna let it go. But if it's something serious, stop it.
I'm just
got
saying,
you.
there's
You can't see his face on the podcast, but he is throwing
He's
shade.
serious.
He's throwing shade at me.
Okay.
It's like she funnels her stuff to me, and then I keep the secrets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, well, okay,
Aw,
his
that's
prom
cute.
date got arrested. Obviously, I'm going to tell everybody. Like, that's not a secret. Like, oh, did that hurt you? No, it was funny. Like, that's the kind of secret I tell.
So yeah, I made the mistake of we covered an arrest, and I made the mistake of telling Andrea, like, oh, actually, I know her.
I went to prom with her.
And so
Well,
by the end of
mine's
the day,
on the
the
sex offender
newsroom.
registry. I have a prom date
Oh,
that's on a
man.
sex offender
See,
registry.
there you go.
Yeah.
We've all been there. We've
Yeah.
all made decisions.
All right.
That's my husband's favorite saying, actually. We all make decisions.
Yes.
Well, on that note, Kristen, people want to reach out to you on the social media. What's the best
here's
way?
another really quick
Okay.
story. I cannot get Facebook to change my name back from
Ooh,
Kristen
that's
Nicole
hard.
to Kristen Pflum.
Oh.
I'm like, this is my maiden name, guys,
Yeah.
and they just think I'm a total fraud, I guess, and they won't change it back. So I'm hoping I don't have to start a new page, but
That's
for
you
now,
don't want to lose those people.
I know. Those are my peeps. And they've been reaching out to me for years. So right now you can find me at Kristen Nicole, which is my middle name, guys. Kristen Nicole.
Did Chicago just not like Pflum?
They didn't like Pflum, and which was weird because we had a Baumke and a Milkowski and all these weird last names. I'm like, but you try to roll, and you don't want to be the
Right.
new girl that comes in
Yeah.
and ruffles
Like, I'll do
feathers.
whatever you say.
Yeah, exactly. But it never caught on to that.
It's a hassle. Everything's
So,
just a hassle with stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm on Instagram. I think I'm Kristen on Fox on Instagram, and then also on Twitter.
But you get to keep.
I do. Those. Thank you,
perfect.
Instagram and Twitter, for being easy to change my name back.
All right, nice. Well, and when do you start? When will people
October
be able to...
1st.
October 1st. All right, so a little bit of time.
Yep.
And
Sneaking up on me though.
Yeah,
Get
I
this
was gonna say,
one.
well, that's the thing. You say,
have
oh,
to
we've got a few months, and next thing you
detach, I
know, you
know.
blink and it's all over. Yeah. All right, well, we look forward to seeing you
I
around
can't
the
wait
office.
to see you guys.
I may never see you. Unless
That's
you just
true.
happen to stay.
that's what Victor said. If you see me, it's probably a really bad day.
Yeah, it's been a long day.
Well, I fill in every now and then for Sam, so we may cross paths that way.
What time do you go to bed? So I'll make sure I call you and
Exactly. Yeah.
wake you up. a few
Well,
times.
ideally by 10:30, but
Oh yeah. You're a late one.
I know.
And we've this is baby talk, so Andrew, you can just go ahead and tune out if you want. We got we were very blessed because Vera started sleeping through the night around 2 months. Just boom. And then within the past few weeks, she started waking up around midnight, and we'd give her some milk, and then again around 5, and we'd give her some milk. And so then
regression.
At her 15-month checkup, anyway, the doctor was basically like, yeah, no, just put her down and just leave her alone. We're like, okay, you know what? You gave us the permission. And so she'd start crying, and we'd be like, suck it up, kid. And but now she just sleeps through the night.
I can't even do that with my dog. I can't imagine a child.
So,
I know.
Yeah, shout
That's
out.
a bad habit, though, when you start doing the milk and the milk because they want that. But I'm with you, Victor. I can't. Like, if they want it, I'm like, Mama,
That's
come
my
get
thing.
you.
I'm like,
Mama,
come on,
get
come on.
you.
I know.
But we said, you know what? She gave us permission to, so now she just sleeps through the night again. It's
Good.
been nice.
It worked.
So that's what I'm saying. When we go to bed at 10:30, we all go to bed.
All right.
I mean, she's before that, but a few hours of adult time.
This
just
is
hanging
the
out and watch TV.
the tangent podcast. This is what happens when you haven't
People
seen
are like,
someone
okay,
in so
I
long.
gotta go. Okay, they're still talking.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Yeah, every time somebody who has kids is on the podcast, that Andrea gets kind of shoved to the side for a little bit.
I love
But
babies, though.
You do love babies.
I do.
And Vera loves you.
Sometimes.
Well, see, since you work the morning, if I'm ever in a pickle,
you
Andrea,
go.
I'm gonna be like, back that podcast up. You said you like babies, and I got a baby,
I got
and
you,
I got
girl.
a trouble spot. So, yeah,
How much do you really like babies? Yeah. All right, everybody. Well, this is fun. We'll have to do it again sometime. Yeah, once you
Yep.
hit the.
We'll keep it shorter
You're
next
going.
time.
yes.
People can watch this or listen to it on their lunch break,
They'll be all
not
right.
roll into their dinner break.
All right, bye, everybody. Well, Andrea, well, you've got a very excited look on your face. How do you think that went?
I thought it went well. It was interesting, and I definitely wanted to talk about that surprise wedding because I think that is too cool.
Very interesting.
And I wish I had asked about the proposal, but we didn't.
Gave you some ideas, though.
Who am I
for your
popping the
surprise
question to?
Someday. But yeah, and so that was
Goodness
I guess, was that your first time meeting Kristen? Really?
Well, I saw her. I don't think we ever really had any real interactions. Like I said, I think I said the week before, she was always kind of intimidating to me. You know, she's
Tall.
tall. She's tall and she's beautiful, and you know, she was accomplished. So I was a nobody. I kind of just kept to myself and tried to be more observant than the loud voice I am now.
But look at us now. Now she's on our show.
Woo!
Yeah, we appreciate her, having her on and her coming in and bringing little Cruz,
Oh, I know.
our second baby on the podcast. He was a cutie and he was so well behaved.
He was so good. Yeah, he was. Yeah,
Well,
he
there
was
you go.
real good, baby.
All right, Andrea. Well, favorite things. Mine could easily be a food thing, but it's not going to. We've established no more food items. I will just say, go eat the Popeyes chicken sandwich. It's really good.
If they have it,
It's become kind of I've had 3. So here's the funny thing. Yesterday, I go, because I've discovered if you go around lunchtime or just before lunch or just after lunch, you can usually get it. It's in the evening when they tend to run out because by the end of the day. So I go in, I think it was around 1:15. It was right around 1 because I had an interview at 12:30. I go walking in, and who do I see in line in front of me but Robert Thomas and John Nelly from Promotions.
oh my goodness.
They all, oh, hey, how's it going?
Were they getting the chicken
so they were
sandwich?
also
Of course.
They wanted to try it. And then it's also funny because Devin Jackson, who's been on the podcast before, he is all in on Chick-fil-A. He's had several Facebook posts talking about how he refuses, I think, to cheat on Chick-fil-A
Oh my
because
gosh.
of
Well, I
how
saw-
loyal he is to them.
I saw a pretty epic picture where it was based on Bring It On.
Yes.
And you were on the Clovers.
Yes.
And Devin
Representing
was
Popeyes.
on the Toros.
Yes.
Because I don't know.
Which is an odd visual, but it's accurate.
Yeah? And you said you were proud to be a Clover?
Proud to be a Clover, man.
Well, they were clearly the superior team.
Oh my goodness, Popeyes, they haven't done me wrong yet. I will
I
say
haven't tried it yet, and I really want... Where even is a Popeyes?
it's on Nicholasville Road over near Old Broadway.
You know I
You
don't
know
know,
where
street names.
Golden Corral is?
No.
You don't know where I thought you would have every Golden Corral mapped out. Your face now. Oh, what? Anyway.
I thought about a rebuttal, but I was like, nah, keep it real.
I love Golden Corral. What was that face?
I do too, but, you know, it's the chocolate fountain. I'm scarred.
Yeah.
Saw a kid pick their nose and then stick it in the chocolate fountain. I was like, ooh.
Oh, wow.
But I don't think kids eat enough dirt nowadays, and that's why there are so many diseases.
That took a turn. I wasn't expecting that.
Okay,
but
I do think our kids are too sheltered.
Vera I've caught her eating handfuls of it before. And the other day, she was in the kitchen with Mandy, and Mandy sees her like working something in her mouth. She's like, "What are you doing? Stop, come here." And she holds her hand out and she goes, "Bleh," and out comes some dog food that she grabbed out of Vader's bowl.
Oh my gosh. Well, Kelsey literally said that. I stole that line from Kelsey Mattingly. She's like, "Kids don't eat enough dirt." I was like, what?
Every generation likes to talk about how soft the following generation is.
It's so true, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I remember when I was little and everybody just like, "Oh, kids nowadays, they don't." And it's, I'm sure in 1910, kids were like, "Oh, or old people were like, when I was in the 1870s, things were," and so it's just.
Well, technology just keeps getting better and better.
It's a continuous cycle.
What will our kids say? I mean, obviously, we're going to say, "I remember a time without smartphones when you had to look stuff up on a computer."
Yep, I had to print.
But then everybody else is like, "I remember when I had to go to the library."
I was telling one of our reporters here, newer ones, about how I had to print out directions from Google Maps.
Oh, I used to do that all the time.
To get to my first job interview here in Lexington. It was my first time driving in Lexington, and I got lost.
Aww.
Because that's what you do.
Oh my gosh, I feel nostalgic. It actually makes me happy to talk about stuff like that, though. Isn't that weird? It was such a hassle.
I bought a Garmin, like one of those TomTom things, and it would change my life. It wasn't as accurate as your iPhone now, but it was great.
Well, my mom needs to take my brother's old Garmin because despite having an iPhone, she doesn't believe that her Google Maps works.
Distrust of technology, that's a common thing.
I tell her all the time it's user error, but she doesn't believe it. She's like, "No, mine just doesn't
Just
work."
download Waze. It's pretty simple.
Yeah, and Cookie Monster.
Yeah, and you can get Cookie Monster voice, which I accidentally enabled on our trip to Chicago. So we had Cookie Monster telling us to watch out for police.
That was awesome. Wait, what is your favorite thing then? We look at us. We went off.
Well, no, we had a lot of diversions, and I was also going to say the service at Popeyes and Chick-fil-A. I have had very different experiences.
Well, Chick-fil-A is overly polite.
They are so polite sometimes it's creepy. It's almost like a Stepford Wives type thing. They've always been, they're always super, super nice, and I always feel warm after leaving there. Popeyes, you can tell that at least my last couple trips, they're a little overwhelmed.
Well, yeah.
I mean, there are lines out the door, and they're doing their best.
Oof.
And my food has been delicious every time. But yeah, the one time I also had got some strips for Mandy. I was like, "Hey, can I get some sauce?" And the guy's like, "Oh, okay." And he goes and gets it. It's just like one additional step was a lot. And when you're dealing with that many people,
I know.
I wanted to apologize. I would be like, "Man, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I'm here, and that you all are having to cook me food."
Honestly, I've felt that way before. When people I can just tell they're slammed. We worked in food. We know, like, it sucks. You're just like, I don't want to ask for anything. Yeah. It's fine. Whatever you give me is fine. Speaking of rude people. So I was trying to meet someone. I bought a clock off the Facebook Marketplace the other day.
Oh, did you?
And I was texting the lady to tell her that I was on my way. I was at a stoplight, fully stopped, and I guess I missed the light turning by maybe 2 seconds, and a guy looked over at me and screamed, "Wake the F up." It was so scarring.
That's terrifying.
He was so mean.
I'm sorry he did that to you.
I was shocked.
I will say, if I'm at a red light and the person in front of me, if it turns green and they pause for 2-3 seconds, I'm tapping that horn.
Okay, well,
because I know they're on their phone, and it's like, just
speaking
stop it.
Up, he laid on his horn, and he wasn't behind me. He was next to me. Yeah, and I was like, I'm not even affecting you. Why are you screaming at me?
And he was still there, too. If he was still there, then he also hadn't moved.
And then I immediately passed him and was caught up within a second with the car in front of me. I was like, that was such an overreaction.
Well, Andrea, sometimes people just drive angry.
Clearly. And I incite a lot of anger. I'm a terrible driver. I can admit that.
So your bad driving is what may have done it?
I'm not the most observant person. For example, my phone is currently at the Dollar Tree on Maple Leaf because I forgot it yesterday.
What? So did you sit it down to pick something up?
See, I had to have. I was pretty sure. I think I left it in my cart. And I realized immediately when I got in my car, I was like, "Oh, shoot, I forgot my phone." I was like, "I hope no one took it already. So I run back in. I asked the lady at the register. She didn't have it. And I remembered I had a black cart. They have black and green carts. And I remembered I had a black cart. So I walked all around the store and approached creepily all the people with a black cart and was like, is there a phone in there? Did you notice anything in there? And of course, everybody just looked at me like I was a crazy person.
And a few people were like, that's that girl from TV.
Probably. But yeah, so none of them had it. So I, at that point, was like, it's over.
Did they call you and tell you they found it or something?
Yes, I was literally looking up, like, to file the report on Verizon.com or whatever, and somebody called me, Leisha, from the Dollar Tree and Maple Leaf.
Called the station or just called?
She called my work phone.
Yeah.
Awesome. I was so happy.
Well, that's awesome. Good service. Good on you, Dollar Tree.
That's my favorite thing this week. Good people.
Good people. The fact that somebody, found your phone, called you up, turned it back in.
I had very little faith.
Especially after your experience.
Been renewed.
Especially after your experience losing your wallet down in, on your trip or whatever. Whenever your stuff got stolen. Wasn't that what you said? Your credit cards, your debit cards got stolen?
Who knows? This happens a lot to me.
How many times have you lost your debit cards?
I don't like to talk about it.
You mean this is something that happens so often that you don't remember? We talked about it on this podcast. Like there was an incident whenever you were down in Nashville.
I don't remember this. But I have no doubt that you're right.
Okay. Well, yeah, because you thought somebody had, or no, it wasn't down in Nashville. It was when you came back. You thought that somebody had pickpocketed you at the mall. Remember?
Oh, they did.
Oh, okay. That's what it was.
I mean, I don't know that.
I think it was during the Nashville podcast. Whenever you talked about that.
This was at Fayette Mall.
Okay.
This wasn't in Nashville. This was at the Fayette Mall, and they did pickpocket.
But we can agree that you believe someone pickpocketed you, but it's also possible that you just set your stuff down somewhere.
But I had all my stuff. I had my whole wallet with everything in it, but my debit card.
So somebody reached in, got your debit card?
There are evil forces.
No, I didn't even realize that part of the story at the time. So somebody reached in, got just your debit card, and left everything else.
Okay, I only had one strap on.
Did they try to spend anything on it?
My purse. And
so it's not possible you just left the debit card somewhere? Okay.
No!
Oh, you know what? I
don't want to have this argument again.
Well,
I feel like we've already had it once.
I believe that, well, I'm learning new things. I didn't realize. I thought that, like, you lost your entire wallet. I didn't realize that somebody, that a ninja was able to approach you while you were shopping, reach inside, pull out just your debit card, and then take off without you realizing it. I didn't know that's what had happened. And that's a lot more impressive.
You're saying it.
I'm sorry that happened to you and that you were targeted by possibly the Yakuza or the Triad, I'm not sure. Somebody who had a lot of skill, maybe a former circus performer or a magician. It was obviously somebody who had real good sleight of hand work. And I'm sorry that they did that to you.
We've talked so much, and I want to tell another story anyway.
Go for it.
I was listening to the Moth.
We don't have a time limit.
I was listening to the Moth Radio Hour, and this guy basically, like, he had some very religious parents, and I guess he started playing Yu-Gi-Oh with his friends, and his dad came to pick him up from something, and like a tournament.
Yeah. Dropped
him off at home. And he comes in, he said his dad never would come up to see his mom because they were divorced and they hated each other. And he's like, well, our son's in a gang. And she was like, what? And he said, he's in the Yakuzas.
Because he's playing Yu-Gi-Oh?
He was playing Yu-Gi-Oh. And he said that, he's like, you know how I know? Because I was able to buy a weapon. And it was literally like a fake weapon from Blade 2. Like it said Blade 2 on the knife. Because they're at some comic book like entertainment store.
Yeah, you get those sweet
Yu-Gi-Oh, Yakuza.
Weapons.
I get it.
And Blade had a really cool sword. You had to flick the little thing so it didn't cut your hand off.
I know.
Yeah.
And he thought that was a Yakuza weapon.
Wow. Well, we shouldn't talk about them too much. They may be listening, but I'm sorry that you were targeted. By someone so skilled.
Thank you.
And also, Yu-Gi-Oh and the Yakuza, two very different things. They always seem so cool in the movies,
Which ones?
The Yakuza. They're in like Tokyo Drift and Avengers Endgame. They pop up in all these movies.
Sure.
I was a big fan of Japanese culture and mythology, which is common with a lot of nerds. You see a lot of people that get into anime and suddenly they're learning all kinds of Japanese words just to try to be cool.
It's okay. Good for you. Just own it.
Been quite the diversion.
Goodness
all right.
Gracious.
My favorite thing was not food. I have started watching season 3 of Glow.
Ooh.
And it's really good.
Female wrestlers?
Yes.
wrestlers.
Yes. This season, a little bit different since it's not so much based on the TV show. They end up going to Vegas, starting kind of a show there. And it's good.
And it's got Mark Maron.
Mark Maron, Allison Brie, Betty Gilpin. She's really good in it.
Nice. I need to watch that. I think I'd like it.
Yeah.
I did start watching Barry per your suggestion. It's amazing and hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah, really good.
The Fonz is great.
Yeah, he is fantastic on there. And have you got to know Hank yet? The bald guy?
I've only seen episode 1. I fell asleep during episode 2.
You'll get to it. Yeah, so that's great. Barry, again, another recommendation. And I finally bought Avengers Endgame came out on Blu-ray. Oh. I've watched it twice so far. Only cried the first time. I think I managed to hold it together the second time. Oh. Yeah, so you know what? Again, I'm going to have to let you borrow my Blu-ray player so you can check all these out.
I know. And the Blu-ray movie.
Oh, yes, that too.
Obviously.
I can bring it to the station. We could watch it here.
Okay, I'm fine. We should pull it up on the giant screens somehow if we could.
Yes.
Yes.
I believe they'd be able to.
I don't see why not.
All right, well, we'll figure it out. Maybe we'll set up a weekend viewing party. Everybody can come in and watch it on the big screen with the giant speakers overhead. That sounds like fun.
I like it. I like it a lot.
One of these days, we need to find a show or movie or something that we enjoy, and we can do a commentary track where it just plays and somebody plays this while they're watching it, and like the three people who enjoy it and us would it's like we're watching it with them.
So do we have to be like press play now?
Yes.
Oh, that would be so fun.
It could even be just for like an episode of TV or just something you enjoy.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, I'm into it.
All right.
I like this idea. Write it down.
I don't write down any ideas. But there we go. Well, thank you all so much for listening.
I doubt anyone's left.
You know what? Thumbs up for good people out there who return things.
Yes.
Glow Season 3 is good. Barry's great. Avengers Endgame, officially the largest movie of all time. They were able to beat Avatar. I think through some funny shenanigans. I think they did. I'm not sure they actually did, but they found money. Whatever. Well, I'll take it. Oh, also, real quick, did you hear that Spider-Man may be leaving the Marvel Universe? Sony and Marvel coming. I mean, I'm a grown man, and this shouldn't bother me, but it does. So there we go. Hopefully they get that worked out. And everybody, be good to each other.
Be kind. Rewind.
All right, bye, everybody.
Bye.